Okay, yeah, this is my talk, DevTools, an animated journey, showcasing many features that have arrived in DevTools in 2016. Thank you for the organizers to allowing me to come here. Really cool conference. I guess I should explain this ridiculous chest cam I've got attached to me. It's just something I do for fun. It's like when I go camping, I wear it. There's a bowling place here, like attached to the shopping center nearby, so I'm gonna wear it and play bowling. It's, you know, when I was at Web Expo, I was wearing this, and like that's what I look like wearing it. But also that's the view that I get, so it's kind of interesting. And you can also put the two side by side, and you get this like audience view and speaker view. I did it at Smashing Conf as well recently. That was cool. So I'll do the same here, and if I get permission, I'll like definitely post this on YouTube or something. A little bit about me. I do web development. I'm based in London. I was born in Mauritius though. I'm part of a program called the Google Developer Experts program. I don't like saying experts, but that's what the program is called. It's just to recognize achievements made in the community. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at UMAAR, so that's 2 A's, even my name is spelt with 1 A. And I post lots of sort of web development related stuff. So if you like this talk, then check out the Twitter, because I post a lot of related information. I work at Shazam, the music recognition company. You know, if music is playing, you can hold your phone up to that music and it'll tell you what it is. I've been there for 5 years as a web developer. It's really fun. If you want to chat about what we do and the sort of jobs that they're hiring for, let me know. And finally, this is like the shameless plug. I make a mailing list called DevTips. It's a weekly mailing list. You enter your email address, and then once a week I'll send out like this GIF, like a little animation, and that GIF will showcase a workflow in DevTools. And I've just hit the 100 tip mark. Like, so 100 campaigns have gone out, and I'm very pleased with that. And I wanted to explain like why we're talking about DevTools, because this is a JavaScript framework conference. And I want to focus on two specific reasons. One is it's a fundamental of web development. Like if you do web development, you're going to end up using DevTools at some point. And that's not necessarily Chrome DevTools, which is what this talk is about. That's any browser DevTools. But also speaking to developers from like conferences and at workplaces, I found out that developers tend to use the part of DevTools that only they're interested in, which makes sense, but it means that they don't end up focusing on other parts of the toolset. So you might get the UI developer who only focuses on the elements panel, and you might get the JavaScript developer who only focuses on the sources panel. But the goal of this talk is to give you a wider overview of what the DevTools is capable of, and make sure you're armed with the knowledge to debug your web applications. And just to get a feel, like how many people have used DevTools? Oh, cool. Oh, phew. Okay. That would be like weird if there was no one. Okay, great. So what we're going to cover in this talk, I'm going to tell a few like stories. So rather than just, here's a feature and that's the end of it, I'll try and tell it as a story. We're going to have an animation story, JavaScript debugging, accessibility. I know, accessibility at a JavaScript conference. Who would have thought? We'll cover a few smaller bits and pieces, like recently DevTools has gained the like various features that I'll just talk about very briefly, and then we'll finish off with Node.js debugging. And I want to prepare you for like the structure of this talk. If anyone has seen my talks before, or like has seen the stuff I post online, it's always like GIFs and videos. So this whole talk consists of like very short video clips. That's just a heads up. I hope that's not too, like hopefully the screens will show it okay. And we'll start out with the elements panel, and it's the thing that everybody knows how to do, but it's just to get into the habit of looking at videos on screen. So yeah, you hit that little arrow, you go over to the page and you inspect an element, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And again, another one that I'm sure we all know and we've all done at some point, adding styles. You can type in a property, you can type in a property value, and yeah, you see the updates in real time. So that's it. That's just to get you into the habit of looking at videos on screen. And a little side note about the last video that I showed. If you saw the property that I entered, it was scale as opposed to transform scale, which is what you'd normally enter. And that's made possible with independent CSS transform properties. Just don't look at the browser support for that, because it will make you very depressed. But one nice thing is that Chrome does support it. So you can use it like in DevTools. I think it's experimental right now. Okay, moving on to the actual like interesting features of the DevTools. One is the ability to toggle element classes on or off. So here I am on a Bootstrap web page. And Bootstrap, as you know, has lots of CSS utility classes. So if we hit that CLS icon, we can easily toggle classes on or off. So I hope that makes sense what's going on there. You've got an element, it's got various classes, and you can just switch them on or off very easily by clicking on that little check mark that you see. The layout editor, this is a really powerful one. This is going to change what it means to be a web developer, or maybe even for people that don't do web development. It'll make it a lot easier to change styles on a page. So here I am on smashingconf.com. I've got DevTools opened up. I'm going to click that little toggle layout editor, which is experimental right now, and I'm going to inspect an element. When I do, you can see these green handlers appear, and I can drag those. And by dragging that, that actually affects the the dimensions of the element, which is super cool because it means that someone who doesn't have experience with CSS can now go and edit web pages. And as scary as that is, that's kind of interesting. And it's, again, it's a work in progress. This is I think the DevTools team are working very hard to make this compelling for people to actually start using. And to recap, you've got green. The green handlers represent the padding, the orange represent the margin. I'm sure over time we'll be able to edit a lot more. And yeah, I think we already covered what you can do with the layout editor. Okay, so we've covered a few features of the Elements panel. Let's move on to animation. Animation specifically, when talking about the DevTools and what it supports two different things. One of them is called the animation recorder. And that is what it sounds like. You record animations. So here I am on wow.js. It's got a bunch of ridiculous animations as you scroll the page. And what I'll do is as a web developer, we want to capture these animations. We want to sort of dive into them and see what's what. So I'm going to open up DevTools, and you see the animations pane? Well, that's going to record all the animations going on the page. And each rectangular block, do you see those 3 rectangles? Each of those represents an animation which has been recorded. But what's cool is you can hover over one of those animations, which I think I do right now, and it replays to you that animation. So that alone is it's kind of interesting, but you might be thinking, well, what's the point? What do you do with that? Well, to complement that feature, there's a feature called animation inspection. So given a recorded set of animations, you're able to click on those, and DevTools will present this breakdown to you of all the animatable properties, which is amazing for diagnosing and debugging CSS animations. So here I've got an animation called bounce in right, or rather the web page has an animation called bounce in right, and it's presented that to me. I can drag the handlers around, and that in turn affects I think in this case it's the transition duration and transition delay. You get the playback control, so you can sort of replay that animation as much as you want. It's very powerful. And to recap what we just saw, there's the recorder and the inspector. The recorder captures all the ongoing CSS animations on your page. And yeah, there's no record button. You just have to make sure that animations pane is open and it will start recording. The inspector, on the other hand, allows you to click on a recorded animation and start affecting the delay or the duration. And I'm sure over time you'll get more granular control over editing those animations, but that's what's available now. And I think that's experimental or not, possibly. But yeah, you can try that out in Canary. And I don't know who here has heard of the Web Animations API. It's this, I guess it's a draft, and Chrome has some very limited support, and possibly Firefox. But it's essentially, you can think of it as a CSS animation, but in JavaScript, the ability to programmatically control animations. And I'm not going to go, this talk isn't about the Web Animations API. This is about a DevTools integration that it has with the Web Animations API. So here we've got the simple CSS animation, and all those blue circles that you see flying out, each one of those is a different CSS animation. So what I'll do is I'll record it using the animation recorder, which we already saw. I'll inspect it using the inspector, and I'll right-click and say Store as Global Variable. When we do that, DevTools is going to expose to me this temporary variable called temp, temp1, temp2, and I can type in temp.play, and if you see that little blue dot, that's actually programmatically controlling that CSS animation by calling the play method on it. And there's other methods like reverse to reverse the animation, pause to pause it, and yeah, that's really cool. I think it's very sensible integration that DevTools has made there. And just for fun, I thought maybe we could change the these are web-based slides, and I thought we could change the animation of these slides. So I'm going to go back, and that's recorded that animation. Can you see that? Yeah. So now, I'll zoom in a little. Oh, I have to zoom out too. I'm going to change the duration. So this is just like showing how the inspector works. And you can like drag the opacity up. I'm going to make it something crazy. So now if I close, if I close DevTools, see, that's affected the CSS animation. And unfortunately for you guys, we're now going to have to look at the rest of these slides at this pace. I'm kidding, that was a joke. I'll just reload the page and carry on. And when I was making this talk, I wanted to make sure that that the animation tooling is actually useful. So I was like debugging this like really complex CSS animation, and hopefully the screenshot shows you how useful it can be. You've got like this really detailed overview of all the animatable properties, the sort of the easings, and yeah, I find it really useful. Keyframe editing is not really a big one, but the reason I mention it is because it wasn't always there. It's like quite a recent addition to the DevTools, but it's the ability to edit CSS like keyframe animations, so you can add properties in real time. Here I am typing in background green, and you see that that element now animates between its original color and green. You can change the top property. So that's just more to let you know that you can edit keyframe animations right now. Yeah, so we did the duration of those slides. Okay, so we've covered some stuff in the Elements panel. Now we're going to move on to the Network panel. In particular, there'll be two features. There'll be request blocking, which I'll show right now, and then I'll show one more after this. Here I am again on smashingconf.com, where I last spoke. And what I want to do is I want to block the CSS. This wasn't possible before. If you wanted to block resources, you might have to do that at the network level, like using a proxy. But now, if I open up DevTools, I'll filter for CSS, found it, right-click on it, and when I right-click, I'll get an option that says block this request URL. So I'm going to block that. And what this means on subsequent page reloads, DevTools is going to prevent that resource from loading. And the whole point of this is, of course, to block certain assets, make sure your web pages are resilient. So I've got this pane called request blocking. It shows me what's being blocked. The oxford.min.css now highlights red, and I reload the page. Now this is interesting. When I was first doing this, I thought it wasn't working. Can anyone guess why the page still works and why it looks normal? Huh? It's not caching. They've actually inlined all the critical CSS, which, for those who read Smashing Magazine, it's like a really cool thing. They're practicing what they preach, because we talk about this in the web development community. So I think it's great that they're actually doing this. Yeah. So just to recap, they've taken all the important CSS, they put it in the head of the document. So the blocking did still work. We got film strip, which is, I guess some people have seen this before. If you go to the network panel, I'm on Spotify right now, and I want to look at how the page comes to exist, how it loads. So I'm going to throttle the connection to 3G. And if you see in the top left, there's a little film strip icon that's turned on. That's how this whole feature works. And now, after reloading the page, you can start clicking through the screenshots and see how that page loaded. And this is really powerful. Like, you can make it a little challenge for yourself to do this against a competitor website and be like, okay, so their call to action loads in 1 second, whereas ours loads in 1.2 seconds. You can actually make these judgment calls and allow that to drive your product, which I think is really cool. Okay, so we've done animations, we've done a few features of the network panel. Now we're going to move on to debugging in JavaScript, specifically within the sources panel. And just a little heads up, the sources panel, as you might know, is very involved. There's lots of buttons and icons, so I hope that's not too distracting. But I'll mention what it is to be looking at. And first of all, we're going to cover going from the DOM, right, going from your HTML to a JavaScript event listener. And I like to think of this as debugging from the outside in. We've got a web page, and it's a simple to-do app. You type in to-do items, and that adds it to a to-do list. But that part is not relevant. The part that's important is that little button that I'm clicking on right now, which toggles all the to-dos to be completed or incomplete. That button is the button that I want to inspect, and I want to discover what piece of JavaScript has registered an event listener on it. So we open up the event listeners pane, which is right there. That's in the elements panel. And immediately DevTools presents to me all the registered event listeners, and I can inspect, I can click on the line of code, and it will take me straight to the callback function, which executes upon that event listener being triggered. So that's part number 1 in this 3-part debugging story. Part number 2 is live editing. Live editing is what it sounds like. It's the ability to live edit code. So again, following on from the previous video that we just saw, I'm going to change that to-do.save into to-do.hello, just for funsies. And of course this isn't going to work, because hello as a method doesn't exist on the to-do object. Now what I expect to happen is for DevTools to pause an exception. So I click that button again, this function executes, but now DevTools has paused because an exception has occurred, an error has occurred because to-do.hello doesn't exist. And the whole point of this video, the whole point of part 2 in this 3-part story is, hey, we can live edit JavaScript, which is actually a very powerful tool for debugging. Now, moving on to the 3rd part, if you take a look at that call stack, it's kind of messy, right? You've got jQuery, you've got backbone, you had underscore, you have lots of entries which we don't really care about because we didn't write. So I want to show blackboxing. Blackboxing is the ability to right-click on a source file and say blackbox this script. I'm going to do that for underscore. And the idea is you want to do that for scripts which you don't really care about, like maybe you've written, maybe you haven't. But the point is you blackbox what matters to you in that current debugging session. So forget the code right now. Like the idea is I'm just going to each third-party script and I'm blackboxing it. I'm going to close all the tabs. I'm going to start fresh. And without reloading the page, by the way, I'm going to go back to the web page. And I'm going to trigger that to-do, you know, that to-do button I keep clicking on? The toggle all, sorry. So I click it, and exception has paused. But the whole point of this video was just to show you this call stack. That call stack is now 2 items long, like just 2 stacks. And it's like super clean and tidy, and it makes debugging a lot easier. So that was 3 parts. There was the live editing, going from DOM to event listeners, and blackboxing. And if you are interested in blackboxing, you can go over to the settings panel. You get a bit more like granular control over how to, you know, what scripts to block. You can write regular expressions to block a certain range of scripts. And live edit is a really powerful tool, as I already mentioned. And just in case you're interested, I wanted to add a few extra notes about live editing, because I think it's been around for a very long time, but I feel it's like, I don't know, maybe we don't give it enough credit, because it's a really amazing, like, it gives us amazing abilities. And just in case you're interested, when you type in new JavaScript code in the sources panel, DevTools will compare the new code that you've written against the old code, and it will construct a diff of the two, and it will use that diff to patch the old JavaScript file. And this all happens in the V8 engine. So it's a really big piece of like engineering effort to get that working, but I think it works really well. And a little bit sort of extra on the side of JavaScript debugging, I want to show what you can accomplish with source maps. Okay, so when it comes to using source maps here, I'm in Sublime Text, and yeah, I'm using the await keyword, which I guess a few people have seen. And of course, this isn't going to work in the browser. So I'm going to transpile that, and transpilation is happening in the background. That's not being shown in this video. But all you need to know is that's the source file. We're going to go back into DevTools, and we're going to still see that source file. And DevTools is able to show us that source file thanks to source maps. Now, the thing that I want to highlight here is kind of a few things. One is the ability for DevTools to show us the code that we've written. But also, it's the ability to set up what's called workspaces. I don't know if anyone's heard of workspaces, but I'll show you how to set it up, and you'll see what it allows us to accomplish at the end of it. If I right-click, I say Reveal a Navigator, and I'm going to say Add a folder to Workspace, and the idea is I want to add the folder on my file system to DevTools, if that makes sense. And to do that, I'm going to take a network resource, and I'm going to say Map to a file system resource. Cool. And when I do that, DevTools like creates this mapping between the network resource and the file system resource. I'm hoping that makes sense. And by doing that, I can now start writing like new code. I've changed that number into 1000, like calling the numbers API. And what I'll do is I'll go back to Sublime Text, and you see it's also updated that. So that shows write to disk abilities. Again, a very powerful workflow if you use it correctly. When I share these slides out, there's a source map example. It's interactive, so you can see the source file that I've written, and you can see how it maps onto the transpiled file. Service workers I'm not going to talk too much about, but just a heads up, if you've heard of service workers and you want to play around with it, DevTools does support it pretty well. It's got a dedicated entry in the resources panel. You can you can restart the service worker, you can update it, inspect it, you can do a bunch of things. Themes. A lot of people ask about themes. They're all like, hey, let us install custom themes. Why won't you support it? But so DevTools, the engineers behind DevTools went away and added a dark theme. And it's quite nice. I've been using it. It's it works well. If you use a dark theme in Sublime or Atom, you might find this useful. The promise inspector is what it sounds like. It captures and inspects all your promises. So if you're using JavaScript promises and you're resolving them, you're rejecting them, you're doing whatever, it will break down for you each one of those promises. It will show you how long it took to settle, or yeah. So if you resolve it, it will indicate to you that's been resolved, and it will tell you how long it took to resolve. If you reject it, it will also tell you how long that took. Security panel is probably only useful when you're transitioning to HTTPS. If you are in that process, check out the security panel. It will give you details of the SSL certificate and a few other extra bits of information that you might find useful. Accessibility. Yeah, so this is something that I'm not the person to go to when it comes to accessibility by any means, but I want to share it because DevTools has some great accessibility features which I think is worth knowing about. And one of these is through an extension called the Accessibility Developer Tools extension. You install it and you get this new audit, and I've run the audit on smashingconf.com, and it's telling me things like, oh, the text element should have a reasonable contrast ratio, and it even links to the documentation. So it's really they really planned this out well, and it works really nicely. And that's an extension called the Accessibility Developer Tools Chrome extension. And you can also toggle some rules on and off if you find that's a bit too strict for what it's recommending. Now, in addition to that extension, DevTools has actually been getting some native support for accessibility debugging. And here's one example. It's experimental if you want to try it. You can go over to the settings panel, experiments, and switch this on. But here's an accessibility pane where it's extracting out all the ARIA labels, if you're familiar with that. And it's it's just trying to illustrate to you what useful attributes your DOM elements have when it comes to accessibility. The contrast line ratio is super powerful. So given a background color and given a foreground color, the contrast line ratio, can you see that horizontal curvy line? That will tell you the point at which color is below a certain threshold to the point where the contrast is poor. And I think that's great. It's super cool. I guarantee you can go on your websites and understand, I guarantee you can go to your own websites and find text which has a poor contrast ratio. The command menu is another nice one. Command, Shift, and P. And yeah, just like that, you get all these useful, commonly used DevTools functions. You can type in, show the elements panel or whatever, show the profiles, and it will open that up for you. So it's kind of useful if you use Sublime. It reminds me of the, the command menu over there. And now just some other random bits and pieces. If you know of CSS custom properties, just a heads up that the styles pane now supports it. In the styles pane, you've also got this thing called the DOM toolbar, and it just provides to you a commonly used style additions. So I think the idea is you click on one of those icons, and it will immediately add for you a background color property, and you can start typing in. So it's nothing new. It's just making your workflow a bit easier. We already saw some of the color tools, but just a heads up, see all those colors at the bottom, that color palette? Well, those are generated from the colors present on your page. That's kind of, in case you didn't know that. But also you've got actual material design color palettes if you so wish to experiment with those. One I found out recently, if you click and hold on one of the colors, you get all the shades for that color in question. That's kind of nice. The console panel will now remember the everything you've typed in, and you can enable this in the settings panel if you want to try it out. It's called console history. and it will remember all the values you've typed. You can use the up and down arrow keys to go to a previous piece of JavaScript that you've entered. If you make a promise and it rejects for whatever reason, and you catch that promise, that's referred to as a handled, a handled exception, I guess. And there's a dedicated filter for that now in the console panel. For those of us who have used, JSBin, JSFiddle, CodePen, you might know that when you make a web page, when you make a little pen rather, it puts your whole web page into an iframe. So when you inspect an element in that iframe and you try and access it in the console panel, it's like meh, because it can't find it, right? It's in a separate frame. Well, now DevTools will automatically go to the iframe in question based on what you've inspected, if that makes sense. Which is it saves a few clicks, I guess. It's a bit small, I do apologize. But this is just to point out that you can do network throttling like we already saw, but now throttling also supports uploads as well as downloads. So if you're working on like an upload progress bar and you want to throttle that to see how the progress bar animates, that will work. In the sources panel, we now have the ability to debug per thread. So if you've used service workers, if you've used web workers, you might know that they operate on a worker thread that's separate to the main thread. So the sources panel now has the ability to specify what thread you want to debug. This is probably my favorite feature of all. Even it's very simple. It's CPU throttling. So previously we could throttle the network, which is nice. But you hear a lot of people saying, oh yeah, for mobile users. But well, not really, because for me, my mobile phone has a faster internet connection than my Wi-Fi because it's on 4G. CPU throttling really enables us as developers to improve the experience of our users. It lets you understand how your parallax scrolling website will feel on a low-end device. So I really recommend you give this a try. But also, kind of related, but not really, a little bit, I'll show you. We've got a bit of JavaScript here. So it's a bunch of for loops doing a crazy amount of iterations. And we want to know how long these for loops take. So I'm going to go over to timeline. I'm going to record a JavaScript profile. I'll come back to the sources panel, and it annotates for me how long each line of JavaScript code took. And what's really interesting is I tried this on React and Ember, Angular. I tried this on a few third-party libraries and frameworks, and it's fascinating to understand how long certain pieces of JavaScript take. It's really interesting. And you can also combine that feature with CPU throttling, and suddenly everything takes a lot longer, of course. Finally, to finish off, we'll take a look at Node.js debugging. You've got Iron Node, if you want to do some Node.js debugging. You've got Node Inspector, and this essentially allows you to attach DevTools to a node process. Here's an example. I've got an Express web server. I hope you can read that code. So this Express web server is just sending a string back to the client that says hello world. I go over to the terminal and I type in node debug index.js, and it opens up this I think it's called a remote debugging session. It opens up a remote instance of DevTools, and you'll see that in a sec. Yeah, you'll see that here. So this instance of DevTools is remote, and it's inspecting this node process. And I'm going to set a breakpoint, the point at which I send the string back to the client, and you see that that breakpoint works. So we can now set breakpoints in Node.js code. Kind of powerful. I can inspect the local variables. Here I'm inspecting a express request object, which is super convenient because a million times I've had to console.log that same request object. But anyway, to finish off, which I think is kind of cool, we can live edit that Node.js code. I hit Command S, it tells me recompilation has succeeded, and without a page load, I'm going to resume script execution, and that will update in real time. So there was no extra page load, if that makes sense. That all happened in the same session. That's pretty much it. Let's just have a quick recap. We covered a few animation tooling. If you're using CSS animations or JavaScript animations, do check out the animation tooling support in DevTools. We got accessibility, which is great. If you're not familiar with the accessibility recommendations for the web, just get started. The barrier to entry is super low. It makes it very easy to just quickly understand what's wrong and what's not. If you're using whatever, CoffeeScript, ES6, ES7, SAS, LESS, compile source maps using your build system. because source maps will be read by DevTools. DevTools will present your source code to you as opposed to the transpiled code to you, which you don't really care about. In the network panel, you can block requests. You get the film strip feature, which, again, I challenge you to do it with a competitor's website and see which loads quicker. And finally, we saw some Node.js debugging with Node Inspector, but you can also use Iron Node, and they're both on GitHub. That's it for now. Thank you very much.
One. Thank you for the speech. I have two questions. First one, does network limit works for AJAX requests? I've tried to turn on LAN network and it didn't work for me.
So the question is, does the network throttling work for AJAX requests?
Yep.
It should do, but if you're seeing that...
It should, but...
Yeah, it should. If it's not, that will be a bug. And I would try it in Chrome Canary, because I saw some of the commits, and I remember there was a fix for something to do with network throttling. So I would try it in Chrome Canary. If it's still not working, then we can chat after and we can get a bug raised.
Okay, thanks. And second one, do you have some useful case for finding memory leak?
Oh, yeah. So a use case for finding memory leaks. I totally did not show anything to do with profiling, but that's because you could do a whole other talk on it. But essentially, if you open up DevTools, you go to Profile, you want to do something like, I think it's take a heap snapshot, and you want to record one snapshot, and then do like some actions, and then record another snapshot. And then I'm pretty sure you have to compare the two. Is it summary? Comparison? Yeah. And the idea is you'll see like a list of, sorry, that's a bit small. You'll see a list of all these like extra variables or entities, and these can often refer to leaked memory. And so, yeah, you'll use the profiles panel to do that. I didn't go into it at all. Sorry. Yeah, this is definitely the best way. And if you want to use Node.js, there are some. I think there's a heap dump module, which will dump the heap for you, and you can put that into DevTools as well. But yeah, that's generally how you do it.
Hi, my name is Eugene. Thank you for your talk, Umar. I have a question, maybe some stupid question. Why browser developers like Chrome team can't release just Chrome client lightweight without all this developer tools stuff, just for users, for custom for users, not for developers? Maybe it can be more lightweight without all these DevTools things. What do you think?
Oh, so the question is, why can't they release a Chrome binary without DevTools? Yeah.
Release a developer kind of
a developer client, like what Firefox did, I think. Yeah. I think they could have done that, definitely. I guess it's so convenient to have. I mean, I can't answer like why they've done that. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. It would definitely make Chrome a lot more lightweight because it is quite big right now. Yes.
Just they write some new features for Chrome and testing it with their DevTools, so it would be not convenient for them.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Probably. So I just need to install Canary and I'll have all those new features.
Yeah. I didn't explain, but if you download Google Chrome Canary, install it, go to Chrome Flags, enable DevTools Experiments, go to the Settings panel, and you'll get this new Experiments menu, and it will have all these like super, I think I can show you, settings, and see this Experiments. It's got all like the cool stuff that I was talking about. And then if you press Shift, like this is like an Easter egg, if you press Shift 6 times, which I just did, you get these like extra items, and Live SAS, that's a cool one, which I didn't talk about. And there was the layout editor, which we saw at the beginning. So, yeah, Shift 6 times.
Okay, thanks.
As for black boxing, is it possible to black box modules if we use a bundler like Webpack? So if we have just one single JS file with a lot of modules, can we black box some particular modules?
Yeah, so the question is, can you black box like modules or like even functions, like a utility function? Yeah, it's not possible now, but they are working on it. And again, like I was watching the commits, and I did definitely see that the ability to black box like utility functions. Because of course, if you bundle all your code, it's useless to black box that whole thing. You might want to black box an individual function. So that will be possible soon, I guess. I don't know when. Yeah.
I have one more stupid question. You told about the critical CSS is a good stuff. I think many people really use it, but Google, maybe you can ask me why Google Page Speed tool told me that I must remove all critical CSS about my page.
Oh, did it?
Hmm?
Did it really? It told you to remove the
Yes,
critical CSS?
Google Page Speed tool told that you must remove CSS about your page. I remove my critical CSS, and Google Page Speed tool told that it's all ok.
So the only thing I can imagine which it did is it compared the inline CSS in the head of your document to what's in the visual viewport. And if it found that you were styling elements which are outside of the viewport, it says, hey, you don't need that CSS. That's all I can imagine. Otherwise, that would be a bug, because they do recommend to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the speech. Could you please tell a few more words about live reload, about some extension tools, etc.? Thanks.
Yeah, so the question was to just say some things about live reload. Well, I know if you're using React, there's a hot reloading stuff, and that seems kind of cool. What I always do is I have a gulp task or grunt, and then I set up the live reload, so when I make a change to my source file, it reloads the browser. But what's even better is if you set up workspaces, you can type in the sources panel, it will save to your disk, gulp will reload the browser, and it's super convenient, it's a very natural workflow, and that's another way of doing it. And then I forgot the name of the plugins, but there are also some gulp tasks which will inject JavaScript into your page, and that will live inject the CSS or the JavaScript that you need. And I forget, maybe I'll tweet about it when I remember. It might possibly be called gulp live reload, I don't know. But yeah, those are, when it comes to live reloading, that's pretty much what I use. I'll use, oh, browser sync, is that the one? Yes. That's the one that live injects your code into the page, is that it? Yes. And it syncs your scrolls as well, if you have multiple devices, yeah, that's cool.
Thank you, Umar, a lot.
Thank you.